Charlie. I'm really humbled to help celebrate 50 years of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, which feels especially relevant to us in 2020 as we fight for our right to feel safe and to be loved. As you know, this is a read-along. I'll share some brief reflections after I read my section, and you can catch the reading on the gram at Love is a Kind of Cure. See, Father, he is big and strong. Father, will you play with Jane? Father is smiling. Smile, Father, smile, smile. When Charlie was 4 days old, his mother wrapped him in 2 blankets and 1 newspaper and placed him on a junk heap by the railroad. His great Aunt Jimmy, who had seen her niece carrying a bundle out of the back door, rescued him. She beat his mother with a razor strap and wouldn't let her near the baby after that. Aunt Jimmy raised Charlie herself, but took delight sometimes in telling him of how she had saved him. He gathered from her that his mother wasn't right in the head, but he never had a chance to find out because she ran away shortly after the razor strap, and no one had heard of her since. Charlie was grateful for having been saved, except sometimes. Sometimes when he watched Aunt Jimmy eating collards with her fingers, sucking her 4 gold teeth, or smelled her when she wore the asafoetida bag around her neck, or when she made him sleep with her for warmth in winter, and he could see her old, wrinkled breasts sagging in her nightgown. Then he wondered whether it would have been just as well to have died there, down in the rim of a tire under a soft black Georgia sky. He had 4 years of school before he got courage enough to ask his aunt who and where his father was. That Fuller boy, I believe it was, his aunt said. He was hanging around there, but he taken off pretty quick before you was born. I think he gone to Macon? Him or his brother, maybe both. I hear old man Fuller say something about it once. What name he have? Asked Charlie. Fuller Foolish? I mean, what his given name? Oh, she closed her eyes to think and sighed. Can't recollect nothing no more. Sam, was it? Yeah, Samuel. No, it wasn't. It was Samson. Samson Fuller. How come y'all didn't name me Samson? Charlie's voice was low. What for? He wasn't nowhere around when you was born. Your mama didn't name you nothing. The 9 days wasn't up before she throwed you on a junk heap. When I got you, I named you myself on the 9th day. You named after my dead brother Charles Breedlove, a good man. Ain't no Samson ever come to no good end. Charlie didn't ask anything else. 2 years later, he quit school to take a job at Tyson's feed and grain store. He swept up, ran errands, weighed bags, and lifted them onto the drays. Sometimes they let him ride with the dray man, a nice old man named Blue Jack. Blue used to tell him old-timey stories about how it was when the Emancipation Proclamation came, how the black people hollered, cried, and sang, and ghost stories about how a white man cut off his wife's head and buried her in the swamp, and the headless body came out at night and went stumbling around the yard, knocking over stuff because it couldn't see, and crying all the time for a comb. They talked about the women Blue had had and the fights he'd been in when he was younger, about how he talked his way out of getting lynched once, and how others hadn't. Charlie loved Blue. Long after he was a man, he remembered the good times they had had. How on a July 4th at a church picnic, a family was about to break open a watermelon. Several children were standing around watching. Blue was hovering about on the periphery of the circle, a faint smile of anticipation softening his face. The father of the family lifted the melon high over his head. His big arms looked taller than the trees to Charlie, and the melon blotted out the sun. tall, head forward, eyes fastened on a rock, his arms higher than the pines, his hands holding a melon bigger than the sun. He paused an instant to get his bearing and secure his aim, watching the figure etched against the bright blue sky. Charlie felt goose pimples popping along his arms and neck. He wondered if God looked like that. No. God was a nice old white man with long white hair, flowing white beard, and little blue eyes that looked sad when people died and mean when they were bad. It must be the devil who looks like that, holding the world in his hands, ready to dash it to the ground and spill the red guts so niggas could eat the sweet, warm insides. If the devil did look like that, Charlie preferred him. He never felt anything thinking about God, but just the idea of the devil excited him. And now the strong black devil was blotting out the sun and getting ready to split open the world. Far away, somebody was playing a mouth organ. The music slithered over the cane fields and into the pine groves. It spiraled around the tree trunks and mixed itself with the pine scent, so Charlie couldn't tell the difference between the sound and the odor that hung about the heads of the people. The man swung the melon down to the edge of a rock. A soft cry of disappointment accompanied the sound of smashed rind. The break was a bad one. The melon was jagged, and hunks of rind and red meat scattered on the grass. Blue jumped. Oh, he moaned. There go the heart. His voice was both sad and pleased. Everybody looked to see the big red chunk from the very center of the melon, free of rind, sparse of seed, which had rolled a little distance from Blue's feet. He stooped to pick it up. Blood red, its plains dull and blunted with sweetness, its edges rigid with juice. Too obvious, almost obscene in the joy it promised. Go ahead, Blue, the father laughed. You can have it. Blue smiled and walked away. Little children scrambled for pieces on the ground. Women picked out the seeds for the smallest ones and broke off little bits of the meat for themselves. Blue's eye caught Charlie's. He motioned to him. Come on, boy. Let's you and me eat the heart. Together, the old man and the boy sat on the grass and shared the heart of the watermelon, the nasty, sweet guts of the earth. It was in the spring, a very chilly spring, that Aunt Jimmy died of peach cobbler. She went to a camp meeting that took place after a rainstorm, and the damp wood of the benches was bad for her. For 4 or 5 days afterwards, she felt poorly. Friends came to see about her. Some made chamomile tea, others rubbed her with liniment. Miss Alice, her closest friend, read the Bible to her. Still, she was declining. Advice was prolific, if not contradictory. Don't eat no whites of eggs. Drink new milk. Chew on this root. Aunt Jimmy ignored all but Miss Alice's Bible reading. She nodded in drowsy appreciation as the words from 1 Corinthians droned over her. Sweet amens fell from her lips as she was chastised for all her sins. But her body would not respond. Finally, it was decided to fetch Madeira. Madeira was a quiet woman who lived in a shack near the woods. She was a competent midwife and decisive diagnostician. Few could remember when Madeira was not around. In any illness that could not be handled by ordinary means, known cures, intuition, or endurance, the word was always, fetch Madeira. When she arrived at Aunt Jimmy's house, Charlie was amazed at the sight of her. He had always pictured her as shriveled and hunched over, for he knew she was very, very old. But Madeira loomed taller than the preacher who accompanied her. She must have been over 6 feet tall. 4 big white knots of hair gave power and authority to her soft black face. Standing straight as a poker, she seemed to need her hickory stick not for support, but for communication. She tapped it lightly on the floor as she looked down at Aunt Jimmy's wrinkled face. She stroked the knob with the thumb of her right hand while she ran her left one over Aunt Jimmy's body. The backs of her long fingers she placed on the patient's cheek, then placed her palm on the forehead. She ran her fingers through the sick woman's hair, lightly scratching the scalp, and then looking at what the fingernails revealed. She lifted Aunt Jimmy's hand and looked closely at it. Fingernails, back skin, the flesh of the palm she pressed with 3 fingertips. Later, she put her ear on Aunt Jimmy's chest and stomach to listen. At Madeira's request, the women pulled the slop jar from under the bed to show the stools. Madeira tapped her stick while looking at them. "Bury the slop jar and everything in it," she said to the women. To Aunt Jimmy, she said, "You done caught cold in your womb. Drink pot liquor and nothing else." "Will it pass?" asked Jimmy. "Is I'm gonna be all right?" "I reckon." Madeira turned and left the room. The preacher put her in his buggy to take her home. That evening, the women brought bowls of pot liquor from black-eyed peas, from mustards, from cabbage, from kale, from collards, from turnips, from beets, from green beans, even the juice from a boiling hog jowl. 2 evenings later, Aunt Jimmy had gained much strength. When Miss Alice and Mrs. Gaines stopped in to check on her, they remarked on her improvement. The 3 women sat talking about various miseries they had had, their cure or abatement, what had helped. Over and over again, they returned to Aunt Jimmy's condition, repeating its cause. What could have been done to prevent the misery from taking hold, and Madeira's infallibility? Their voices blended into a threnody of nostalgia about pain, rising and falling, complex in harmony, uncertain in pitch, but constant in the recitative of pain. They hugged the memories of illnesses to their bosoms. They licked their lips and clucked their tongues in fond remembrance of pains they had endured. Childbirth, rheumatism, croup, sprains, backaches, piles, all of the bruises they had collected from moving about the earth, harvesting, cleaning, hoisting, pitching, stooping, kneeling, picking, always with young ones underfoot. But they had been young once. The odor of their armpits and haunches had mingled into a lovely musk. Their eyes had been furtive, their lips relaxed, and the delicate turn of their heads on those slim black necks had been like nothing other than a doe's. Their laughter had been more touch than sound. Let me tell y'all what I'm supposed to say. Hold up. All right. Okay. So, Piccola, you know, the little girl in this book, Charlie, who I was just reading about, is her father. There are a lot of little girls like Piccola out there, and you could say that they're parts of every woman, every black woman, you know, Piccola reminds them of parts of us on the inside that, you know, want to understand what love is, that parts of us that feel unloved, don't feel good enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not enough. And I want to say to any girl or any young woman who is feeling that way, God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. And no matter what life throws at you, if you're here, then it's worth the fight. It's worth it to fight for yourself. And that can mean different things for different people, but it's worth it because God loves you, and there are communities of people around the world that love you, even if they don't know you. You also have to huge part of the fight is loving yourself, no matter what anybody else says. Even if you're going against the people that come from you, that you come from, like Piccola. Love yourself. Fight for that love. Fight for it because you're worth it. I want to thank Toni Morrison because her books, she taught me about the beauty of Black women and about our experiences. She taught me the way that she describes the way we talk when we come together, how we age. It happened in this section that I was reading about. That's my favorite part of the section, is her describing the women sitting at the sickbed, laughing and talking, and that their laugh was more touch than sound. That we have a particular way of caring for one another, Black women, that is essential to our individual health and well-being, and it's essential to our survival. And it happens in particular when we come together as a community. And that has always been, I caught that notion from her. I might have experienced it in my family, but I didn't know it was a thing until I read it in her books. And that we are so powerful when we come together. We can cure. And I want to thank the women involved in Love is a Kind of Cure for including me in this incredibly powerful project. And to all the girls out there that are watching these readings and, you know, being introduced to this book or getting to hear the book in a different way through our voices, we love you. We love you. And so many of the women that are a part of this have made it their lives' work to make this world a place where it's easier for you to love yourself and to love on each other. And that's it. I love you. And thank you for letting me read this to you. Happy 50th to the Bluest Eye.